Welcome to Thank You for Your Reply, where we dive deep into the strategies and insights of real estate's most innovative professionals. I'm your host, Rich Pedersen, founder of the Reply AI. At the Reply AI, I take a consultative approach to helping businesses integrate automations and AI tools so they can get back to working on their business, not in it. In each episode of the podcast, we explore the real practices driving success in today's market. No fluff, no pitches, just real conversations with real experts sharing real results. Before we dive in, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Your engagement helps keep the show running. Without further ado, here we go. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Thank You for Your Reply podcast. Today, we're talking to James Furlo, the founder of Furlo Capital, who has his own long-running fancy podcast. So I really appreciate you coming on today and joining me as a guest on my little podcast that's just fledgling still. But
yeah, no, my pleasure. I love talking about real estate and tech and all of that stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I love all your clips that you post on social media. They're good, really well done, professional, and like good little meaty sound bites.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, the team does a good job of putting those together. My wife and I will do our podcast, and I hand it over to them and say, "All right, find stuff that you think's relevant."
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they're good.
Well, and could you just start us off? Just kind of introduce yourself and your kind of quick soundbite trajectory into opening or starting Furlo Capital.
Yeah, so I made my first investment in 2009, and it was into a duplex, and that was actually the start of a fulfillment of pretty much a lifelong dream, because I decided, interestingly enough, to start investing in real estate in 7th grade based on a book that most people know and love, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And yeah, my mom was that weirdo who was like, you know what, my 7th grader would love this book. And so we bought our first duplex, classic, lived in one side, rented out the other. And I was like, yep, I was right. I'm hooked. This is amazing. And so we just kind of kept building, and it was a slow and steady process where I was working a job and we were saving as much as we could so we could buy more places. And so we bought a duplex, then another duplex, then a single family home. Then I had an opportunity to buy an apartment building and a couple other places. And eventually, like, this is what I get to do full time now. And I'm living the dream. It's awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You know, obviously I know the book, but it's one of those I just haven't picked up yet. And I was like, oh yeah, I got a mental note, try to swing back to that one.
His first book's good. His second book, amazing. And that's actually my favorite. It's called Cash Flow Quadrant. And
oh yeah, someone else has mentioned that one too.
Yeah. The entire concept, right, is like where you get your income from. And you can either be an employee, self-employed, which is a glorified employee as far as he's concerned. You could be a business owner, and the difference between self-employed and business owner is a business owner, you could leave for like 3 months and the business would work the same, if not better than when you got back. And then the investor is, your money is working for you. And that's one of the things I love about real estate. It's kind of, if you're actively doing it yourself, you're either in the S and the I, or potentially the B and the I, somewhere in there, but you're getting a couple quadrants at once, which allows you to get some exponential returns. And so for me, like, I don't get excited about a project until we're talking like a 25% return on investment. And that's the kind of multipliers, which I get is, if you're starting up a business, you're looking for a 3x or 5x investment. But real estate, there's a lot less risk, but you still get pretty good returns. But yeah, it's a great book. I recommend it.
Do you have to read both of them, or can we jump right into the
That's a good question. Oh my gosh. It's, I think you could just, that is a good question. I don't remember. I feel like they're standalone.
I'll grab both of them.
Yeah. My mom's still a fan. I kid you not. Like half hour before we started recording, my mom sent me this PDF of something that Robert Kiyosaki wrote. It's like, check this out. So she's been a fangirl since day one and keeps going strong. Yeah. I love it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll put it in the show notes again. Spread the good word.
Yeah. He's doing fine. It's okay.
Yeah. So you have Furlo Capital, and you're also starting to, you kind of diversified a lot, and you're working on Furlo property management. Have a little bit of an ambitious growth plan for that.
I do. It's one of those. I'm also a fan of Jim Collins. All of his books, highly recommend them. I'm a reader, so I'm gonna like throw out all sorts of books. But he talks about this idea of companies. believe it's in Built to Last, where he goes, you preserve the core and then extend, right? You figure out what your flywheel is, and then you kind of you can move from there. And so for me, that flywheel was investing for my own stuff, right? And I was good at it. And through that process, built a lot of systems and tools to manage my own stuff. And it kind of got to a point middle of last year, which again, I've been in the game for 16 years, where I was finally like, you know what? Like, I got a lot of my own stuff that I'm doing, and I got all these systems and tools. And I was just listening to other people talk about their frustration with property managers. And I went, you know what? This is something I can do. And I think I can turn this from being a cost center on my side to actually being a profit center. And I can help a lot more people who already own the assets and don't necessarily want to invest passively with me. I can still help them because they don't necessarily have the time and expertise to do it on their own. And so that was, and Oregon's kind of cool because you can actually take a property management license, or you can get a property management license. There's only a couple states where that's actually an option. And so I was like, cool, did it, studied. It was easy since I knew all the answers because I've been doing it for a while, and even the legal stuff. And yeah, so I've been doing property management for other people and building out a team to do that. And eventually it will be a self-sustaining team. We're building out all the SOPs and the processes and the workflows and all the stuff, which I have, but now it's training others on how to do it. And there's a few other legal stuff you got to do when managing other people's places. But yeah, it's exciting and it's super fun. And it's one of those I didn't know what I didn't know types of things, because there are some like significant differences where it's, oh, it's not my place. And I'm learning through that. So it's super fun and it's gratifying. Again, helping people who like I got a call from a guy yesterday who he's moving to Texas because of a job. And he's like, I'm not ready to sell. I think I want to rent it. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what the laws are. I don't even know how to find somebody. And I'm like, oh, cool. I can 100% step in and help you do that. And so I'm going to preserve his asset and his wealth for him. He doesn't have to sell it and try to quickly find a place. So yeah, it's great. It's super gratifying.
Yeah, that's with property management. I think one of the great benefits that you don't realize as a property owner is if you're trying to do it yourself, there's a lot of little things that you don't think about that you would probably rather not handle. Like so for example, ending someone's lease, or handling like, oh, their dog is pooping in the yard and the landscaping crew doesn't want to mow there anymore, and like that kind of stuff where you're like,
yeah. So here's something interesting. A few years back, this was like 2017, 2018 timeframe. It was right before I actually left my job and went in full time. I had reached a point where I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing. And you know that I talk about, like, you can go panning for gold, or you can sell the tools to help other people pan for gold. I was kind of like, I wonder what some of those other tools are. And so I went around and I started interviewing a whole bunch of investors. And I interviewed, the guys who they own the accidental landlords, which is what this guy is, right? He doesn't intend to be a landlord. It just kind of happened. Those people, to the ones who own 2 or 3, to ones who own like 10 to 20, somewhere in those range. And I just want to figure out, like, hey, what are your pain points? Like, what are the things you're doing repetitively that you hate? What keeps you up at night? If you can wave a magic wand and have things go away, like classic market research stuff. And I was shocked by the response that I got. I was expecting, because I'm a software tools guy, to be like, oh, the property management software stinks, and that's what I want. No, that wasn't it. It was all about property management, or property maintenance. The reason why someone either A, didn't grow, or B, hired a property manager wasn't necessarily around the tenant issues. It was all around the actual physical asset, keeping that up. I mean, I talked to one guy, I couldn't believe it. He goes, I stay up at night wondering if the garage light is being burned out in my rental unit. I was like, all right, that's a weird thing to be. But okay, but like for him, it was real, right? And that was anxiety producing for him. To which he was like, yeah, I get down there regularly and I'm checking all the lights. Like, okay, cool. But that was something that held him back from wanting to continue to grow. And when I talked to this other lady, she had 18 units, and she goes, yeah, it just got to a point, like, it was the maintenance piece. She goes, I couldn't handle it. And so it was super fascinating. So I ended up actually starting a startup, and that was the very first iteration was, okay, how do we help solve that problem? Turns out it's incredibly hard to scale. But and so we ended up doing something that was adjacent to it to empower homeowners to do it themselves. But yeah, those it's maintenance. It's definitely it's a thing, and
Yeah.
there's a bunch of nuance and stuff that. So like one of the one of the things I used to do is, so after we were like, okay, we're heading in this direction of like, what does a almost like a subscription maintenance company look like, that kind of thing. We had created a list of just simply like seasonal things that you should do around your house. And when we were doing it, we were then talking to other people, kind of like testing the idea, like, hey, what do you think about this? And one of the things I would do is I would run through the list, and you would watch people physically crumple up in their chairs, like realizing, oh my gosh, I do need to do this. Oh my word, I forgot about that. That thing? Are you kidding me? I do need to clean behind the refrigerator. What? And so it was like, and I'm like, yes, there's clearly a pain point here. And then, by the way, every single one of them would send us a message after that weekend, like, dude, I had the best weekend ever. I just went through and did all the stuff. It's great. I don't need you. I was like, you know what? Cool. Glad I was able to help. But this is not a business idea.
Yeah.
So we moved on.
Not sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have had renters. They just moved out. I'm putting the house up for sale, and I did a home inspection just to get ahead of any sort of
smart
issues. And those things I was like, I guess as a landlord, I probably should have had that taken care of already. But so in a previous conversation that you're aiming to acquire 200 to 500 unit property management company. What would make an acquisition target attractive to you? And are you actively looking for partners or capital to help you make that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, part of it is, again, it's like, how do I get this thing sustainable and help more people? And I feel like I got really good systems and tools. And yes, I can grow organically, and I'm 100% doing that right now. But I'm also like, man, if there's opportunities out there to grow fast, I'm willing to do that, because there's just a lot of benefits of scale that happens. And so, yeah, I think and I just happen to know that there's a bunch of older property managers in the area who are getting up there. I mean, they're still using pen and paper for certain things. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. And that's just me. I go, that's so much opportunity sitting there. Like, oh my word, we can streamline this thing, bring it in new technology. We can serve tenants better. We can serve owners better by just having on-demand reports. Crazy concept. And, and so it's this combination of, for me, there's a lot of value in quickly getting to 200 or 500, and there's people out there where they're managing like 50, 60 units, and it's a one-man shop. They're doing it by themselves. Like, that's what they do full time. And so that's the kind of thing, again, where I can come in, offer them a very fair price for what they're doing, which is not a huge multiple because it's not super sustainable. It's not a business. It's a self-employed thing. And so for them, it gives them a chance to earn something for retirement above and beyond what they've already saved, and, get some, recurring income, or we'll say passive income for a bit. And so for me, and it just, it gets me that economy of scale real quick. I'm at this weird tweener stage right now where it still feels like I'm doing a lot of stuff, because I am. And I'm like, all right, like I'm at like that weird, like 20 to 30 more units under management. I'm going to hire someone new. And it's just like that weird, you got to get there types of things. And so to just have it is worth it to me. And I am a creative finance kind of guy. I love doing creative deals. For example, I bought my 11 unit apartment building for $400,000, which, again, this was a few years ago, but it was crazy cheap. Yeah. And it was, the bank gave me a loan for $300,000. The seller gave me a loan for $100,000, and then I paid the $3,000 in closing costs. Like, that to me, I'm like, that's a good deal. I then spent $50,000 fixing it up and doing other stuff. But still, like 144% average annual return so far, and I haven't sold it. Amazing. And it's my best deal. That's why I show it off. Yeah. And but I love doing those kind of creative things. And so to buy a company, that's going to be my offer to them, right? I'm not necessarily going to say, hey, let me give you $100,000 for your business cash. It's going to be, hey, let me give you a $20,000 up front. We're going to spread this next $80,000 over the next 3-4 years, whatever, I don't know, whatever I can negotiate, and really pitch it to them of like, hey, we're going to spread out your gains and your taxes. You're going to have this annuity for a few years. It's going to let you kind of ramp down. That's the pitch that I'm going to give them. And you're going to know your tenants are in good hands and your owners are going to do well, and, things like that. So that's how I would finance it.
Okay, cool.
And again, most people, they don't have a plan. Like, they're just like, I was just going to shut it down. And so I'm like, yeah, cool. Take the 100 grand. So they can be flexible on the financing, even if for whatever reason, even if I do default, which I'd have a personal guarantee. And that's part of my other offer. Like, dude, I've got a portfolio sitting behind me. Like, I can afford this. It's not a big deal. Um, but even if I didn't have that and they didn't get paid, like, well, it's better than what I was going to do. Just shut her down. So it's a good, it's a win-win situation.
And you have pretty good speaking of your kind of portfolio, Furlo Capital you opened when? Was that?
Yeah.
You had some track record is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I bought my first place in 2009.
Okay, yeah.
I graduated school in 2007, which was actually perfect timing, it turns out, because it was long enough for me to get a job and actually have some have some experience in that job. Mm-hmm. So when they fired everyone at the end of 2008, I'd already been there for like 2 years. And so I worked for Hewlett Packard. And
that's right, yeah.
Yeah. And so pretty big company, and like everyone else, they were affected. And it was really interesting. I got in and I was like by far the youngest. And then I was there for a couple years, and a few other people who were younger than me showed up because it's a natural hiring process. And then they all disappeared. And I was like, I could tell. I was like, oh, I'm right on that edge. I mean, I was a good performer, so it was fine. And then it was like 5 years I was the youngest and no one showed up. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, younger people again. Cool. So the timing for me was, again, which I just, good job on me on being born at the right time, was I got the job at just the right time where I got to keep it all throughout that recession time period. And then I also meant I had a good enough job and had saved enough so that when the market dropped, I was ready. I had the cash and I knew the market. And so I was able to get a really good deal, which was from another really large investor who was struggling because they got overextended on a few development deals, and they were looking just to liquidate whatever they could. So they put almost everything on the market. Like, whatever sells first will go. And so this happened to be one of them.
You were kind of waiting to go in.
Yeah. And I hit it 2009, which was like the perfect time in the market. And so in some ways I seemed like a genius investor. I was like, yeah, no, I happened to be born at the right time and it all worked out.
Yeah. We'll edit that part out so you can, no one knows your secret
about it. Yeah.
So one of the things you talked about is vertical integration as part of your major strategy.
Yeah.
With holdings, capital raising, property management, and possibly even construction. Do you have an idea how you're going to kind of ensure those entities kind of all support each other and without losing operational focus?
Yeah, I actually think a lot about that. Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, for starters, I think the vertical integration, it just makes sense. Like, I know, so in addition to having long-term holds, I'm doing some flips as well. And part of it is I do have investors and I want to get their capital moving and going. And so I've got some longer term deals, but then I also have these short term ones for people, and they're structured slightly different. But all that to say, like, in the management company, there will come a point in time where it's like, this 100% makes like sense to hire a maintenance person just to have on staff full time, someone who knows what he's doing. I've got various different contractors who I work with now, but they can also help on the flipping side. And so that's where it starts to be like, and you start to have that same logic, like the property management, where I go, okay, this is currently a cost center, but now we have all the tools in place. We've learned how to, this person who's working for me goes through work orders. Like, we have checklists, all that stuff. We have to bill back to our owners. Like, there's a bunch of tools that are in place. And so you go, all right, what does it look like to now go market to other people who we're not even managing for? And I say that like in a single sentence, fully recognizing like that's a whole thing. But to say maybe that's worth learning the whole thing, because now this construction company could become self-sufficient. And for me, the goal would be to eventually, like, I've got a partner who's helping out on the flipping side and he does a great job. And over time, like, he will own more of that. And then my goal will be for the property management company, I'll bring in a good operator, pay them well, they'll get some percentage of rents collected type of thing, and have them manage it. And then I would do that same thing on the construction side when the time comes. And so that's part of the strategy, is bringing good people, incentivize them well. And my job, because I'm really good at building systems and tools and processes, like, okay, let me help you figure that out to make your life as easy as possible. I can also do the sales side some. And I think eventually you get to a point where you start to have like subject matter experts for each of these things. Like you have someone who's like, hey, yeah, they are good at making marketing stuff and doing video editing, and then maybe you have someone who's doing sales, or you have someone who is a bookkeeper. Like I've got a bookkeeper now, and she does the different businesses right now. And she goes, yeah, I can handle them all, and I get where you're headed, and I do everything the same way for each place, and so she gets it. And so I think there's some of those advantages. But yeah, keeping the operational focus, that's something that keeps me up at night for sure. I also look at it and go like, big companies like HP figured it out. Now I get their margins are awesome, but they figured it out, and so have a bunch of other medium sized companies. So I'm like, all right, this is a solvable problem. It's just getting the skills and talking to experts who are ahead of me on like, all right, I've got this issue. What do I do?
As long as that's what's keeping you up at night, not the garage light bulb
Yeah. Oh man. Yes, correct. Yeah. It's actually, I heard this quote somewhere and I liked it. Where it was like, yeah, when you first get started, you're solving $100 problems and, just in life. And then eventually you move up to where you're solving $1,000 problems, and you want to get to a point where you're solving 10,000 and then $100,000 problems. And so that's kind of, and again, like, because I was there, folks at HP, and I know there's others, like they were solving $1 million problems, right? And I mean, it's kind of nuts where I remember like you would pitch them, hey, I've got an idea for a product we could do, and we think this thing will make 100 million a year. They go, yeah, not quite good enough. Like, let's keep talking. So anyway, so for me, it's the light bulb is definitely that $100 problem, and I think I've progressed past that. But yeah, it's how do I worry about those bigger things? And for me, I would love to get to a point where it's really about the problems that I'm trying to solve are leadership development types of problems. How do I get my leaders to be better to help them run these organizations as well as they can? And so I'd like to get there. I'm not there yet, but that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, that's a good goal. This podcast is physically brought to you by HP because this is an HP laptop I'm sitting on. But not financially. So you have a background as a data scientist, and I'm sure that shows up in how you approach your KPIs. Can you break down your key data points that you track for performance, especially when you're evaluating which part of the business that's delivering ROI?
Yeah. I'm a numbers guy. Yeah, I think it's like it's helpful for me to think about it on like a multi-scale level, right? Because there's definitely things like on a daily basis, there's things that I'm tracking, and just in terms of like how's my time doing, and am I spending that wisely on my highest priority type of stuff? And I would say like that's the primary tracker on a daily basis. I would then say like on a weekly/monthly basis, some of the KPIs, well, on a monthly basis, the KPI is definitely like, did we collect all the rent? That kind of stuff. That's super important. And because that obviously is a very like, that's the driver for everything, right? If people don't pay the rent, it causes all sorts of problems. And so like on a monthly level, like that's what we're looking at. That's what we're paying attention to. Today's the 4th. Tomorrow's a very important day. We're already, for anyone who hasn't paid yet, we're already sending out reminders. Like that's how important it is. And I would say on a quarterly level, it's more that bigger picture. We're looking at the net operating income type of numbers, types of things. We are paying attention to like, what's the turnover look like? What are vacancy rates? I also have a certain number of acquisitions that I want to do every year. And I've learned that it's not like, you can't just do this linear, we're going to do 1 to 2 every month. That's not a thing. It's more like I'll do nothing for 3 months, and then it's like, oh, and here's 4. Okay, cool. And so as hard as I've tried to spread that out, it doesn't happen. And so, but those are numbers that we're looking at. Like we have a dashboard. We're looking at like how many leads came in, who are we talking to, where do the leads come from, what's kind of working, how do we double down on that kind of stuff. And that's, again, we're looking at that quarterly-ish, just because it's too variable to look at on a weekly basis, has been my experience. I suppose if I 10x my budget, then I could look at it weekly, but I'm not there. And but yeah, and then I think there's other things too where it's like at that higher level, like I do have this unit number that I'm paying attention to, but it's also kind of a weird. I don't have control. That's an output, right? I don't have control on that number, but I do have control on the inputs. And so far, all I've done for the management business is just organically just tell people, oh yeah, I have this. And that's been enough where I'm like consistently getting people calling me saying, hey, could you please manage my place? Like, sweet. My plan, and what I've been doing is, because I knew there was going to be some learning curve on it, has been this first half of the year, like, let's just build the foundation. Let's just figure out what we're doing. For the people who have come to me because they're like in that much need, like they're willing to deal with me learning. And so I've reached a point where I'm like, okay, systems are in place. I got the people, like we've figured out some of the funkiness behind it. Awesome. Starting in July, I'm going to go more on a more marketing push type of thing, and try to be like, okay, now this is where I've fired some bullets, to use a Jim Collin quote. I'm ready to fire the cannonball, and that I've calibrated myself. And so that, for me, one of the metrics is going to be just simple, like what outreach did I do? How many leads have I talked to? I think a primary driver of client leads, owner leads, it's going to be real estate agents. If you think about yourself, right? If you had to find someone, like your natural inclination is to call your agent and be like, hey, who do you recommend? And yeah, do kind of that stuff. So that's gonna be my focus. And so one of the metrics is gonna be, again, it's gonna be like, who am I outreaching to? And I'm also gonna be paying attention a lot to what are those initial questions that they have for me, and and how do I answer those earlier or provide tools to help answer those earlier? Like, a really obvious one is everyone wants to know, like, okay, if I rented it, how much would I get it for? And I'm like, all right, cool. Let me create a tool to answer that question for people easily and just have that be my lead magnet. Here you go. Here's your answer. There's, and part of it is like, honestly, all the tools exist out there. But like for me, I'm a data scientist, so I can say, cool, I'm going to look at all 12 of them. We're going to bring them together and, and do that. I think those are some of the big metrics that I'm looking at. I care a lot at like an annual level. My return on equity is an important number for me, because I've had situations where like you fix up a place, it's awesome. The return on investment looks amazing, but I'm sitting on a pile of equity. I'm like, oh man, the opportunity cost here is huge. And so that's something, again, I don't look at it every month. It doesn't move fast enough for that to matter. But once a year to look at the portfolio, it's like, okay, where do I need to shed something or trade up or something like that? Because I had that a few years ago where I was looking at my first 2 duplexes in a single family home that I bought. And I ran that number and I was like, oh my God. And that was like, this is in like 2002 type rate, where the market had just been like on a tear. And yeah, my return on investment was like, for one property, for example, the return on investment was like 52% a year. Amazing, right? Who wouldn't love that? Return on equity, 3%. And it was just because I was sitting on 200 grand worth of equity that it had built in this place, where I initially paid 185 for it. And so I was like, oh man, okay. And so I ended up taking those and traded them into a set of warehouses. And when you first buy it, your return on equity and investment is exactly the same. And so that was like, okay, I got to reset that at a higher level. And so that's something I'm paying attention to, a metric at a high level. So that's kind of how I think about KPIs. Like I said, I've got some dashboards that I'm looking at pretty regularly, but yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Dashboards that you kind of built out yourself, or are they part of?
Yeah, they're not fancy. They're just spreadsheets with I've got whatever the measure is going down the left-hand side, and I've got dates going across the top, and then I just track, look them up. Again, it might be like, hey, what's the bank account balance is one of them. What's again, like, how many leads do we do? How much money do we spend on the leads? What kind of repairs do we have to do? Those kind of things. Just kind of tracking them over time, and most of the learning comes to just filling it out, going, oh, look at this. But I found that to be a helpful discipline, to just regularly look at those.
Yeah, kind of do your rounds.
Yeah, exactly.
So managing flips and rentals and syndications all at once requires some operational clarity. How do you decide which projects to pursue personally versus delegating it or outsourcing?
That's a good question. And one that I don't know if I have a clear, distinct answer yet. There's some things that it kind of depends on, like, I want to figure out a way to say this without me sounding conceited. There are some things that have to be done right, and I feel that I'm really good at doing it. There we go. May or not be true, but I feel that way. And so, like, for example, one really important part of the success of my business on the management side is getting the right tenant in, right? If I get someone who's qualified and who's responsible, it makes everything else super easy, right? And so that's like the tenant screening and that initial finding someone. I have not given that up. It will probably take a while for me to give that up because it is so critically important to the success of the business. And it's one of those like, man, I could think of that as like early stage defense. And if I get that right, again, like I can hire someone else to do all the communication and to just be nice, treat them like a normal person because they're good people. And it's fine. And I don't get a lot of fires on the back end because I've done the hard work up front. And so so that's one where I do it. But again, on the communication, the rent reminders, I don't do that anymore. And it's because I set that firm foundation. On the investing flipping side, I do the underwriting. I've got the spreadsheets, I've got the analysis, I got the tools for it. I have taught other people how to use my tools, and I still double, triple check the numbers. And just because I'm like, again, that's the important part, right? If we get the numbers right and our assumptions right on the acquisition side, it makes the rest of the investment super easy because you got the margins to make mistakes and do stuff. If it's too tight, you're just like, oh my gosh, okay, now what do we do? Like, this thing came up, we didn't budget for this problem. And so that's a really critical part for me that I do. And so it's kind of that, like, there's a combination of like, well, what's hard? And I'm happy to do that. And then what just the consequences are big, I guess, for messing up,
Yeah.
I suppose. And so those are places that I'll insert myself. And oftentimes it is at the very beginning of whatever it is that we're doing. Because if I get that right, we're good. Like the construction stuff, I used to swing a hammer all the time. I have completely taken a house down to studs and rebuilt it. Like I have done that. I got all the cool tools now, which is fun. But I try really hard not to do it. And it's really hard. I got a project right now. It's the first one. I didn't do anything. It's amazing. I mean, usually I'm in there for like half a day doing something. And part of it is like, I find that if I'm there, even if I'm just doing demo, that half day, I get to walk around, I get to see stuff, I get to take it in, steep myself in it. And then it's better for me to manage it on the back end, but I'm trying hard not to be that person.
Yeah.
But that's one where I'm trying to give it up. But yeah, that's what are those critical decisions tend to be at the beginning. Even on the sales side, I'm less in that part. I'm like, hey man, like my broker, you're the expert. Got it. Go for it. Whatever. That's less, which you would think I'd care about that. But at that point, I'm like, dude, the game's what it is. Now we're just finding out what the score is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and your name is on the company. So, you have a very vested interest in making sure that everything is working as it should. And
yeah, that's true. Which is something I often tell investors, because they're like, hey man, what are you putting into this? I'm like, my reputation is huge. That's a big deal. If I don't do what I say and this doesn't work out, you're never going to invest and you're not going to tell anybody. And that's a problem for me. So yeah, no, that's huge.
Well, so weirdly remind me, when you're talking about a small mistake can have a huge impact. Love this fact, but when they built the channel between France and England, they started on both sides and met in the middle. And if there was a miscalculation where it didn't meet exactly, the whole thing would have been completely for naught.
Yeah.
It's not like
That's
you could put a turn in the train.
Yeah, but it's fascinating thinking through, like, what are those moments, right? And I think about that in terms of like for NASA, right? They will spend years getting the math right on a satellite because once it's up there, like we're done. Like we can't make any course corrections. And the channel is another great example of that. And I think there are those moments where it's like, man, we're gonna measure like 4 times before we cut once. But it's like, and figuring that out. And then what's the one where it's like, let's half measure, let's take a cut, and let's just see what happens. And it's kind of like, what are those? Like doing podcast episode, right? That's definitely a half measure. Let's just take a cut and see what happens. Heck, I'm not even going to measure until I take 10 cuts, and and then we'll see. And I think that's having that discernment is important. And I do help with those kind of things as well. I'm just like, again, on the underwriting, I'm like, no, this is a measure twice, cut once type of deal. But then there's other stuff where it's like, no, like we're we're okay. Like, let's try something. What would you say? Again, like if I got a good relationship with the tenant, I'm going to let the other person be like, go ahead and write something, let's see how they react and we'll learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and sort of on this subject, we're in this territory now where we're using stuff with AI, and
Oh, yeah.
you have the choice of trusting what the AI did or verifying it. But when we talked before, you were saying that AI has made a big difference in communication and like sort of tenant engagement. Can you share a few practical ways you're using AI right now, and where you might want to try to innovate more with that?
Yeah, definitely. So there's the obvious communication piece. Like for example, again, I've got an assistant. She'll write stuff, and I'm at a point now where I'm like, dude, do your draft in ChatGPT. You have a little prompt. Hey, I'm writing this email to a tenant. You can even give it the copy and paste whatever it is that they said. Do your draft, and then give it some, like, either write it in the style of James Furlo, or pull from the principles from these books. And I've got like 4 of them that I particularly like, depending on what the conversation is, right? Like if it's more like a salesy type of thing, I've got my, hey, pull from the principles from these books. If it's more of a, hey, this is sensitive information, or sensitive situation, pull from these ones over here. And so anyways, so I've shared those prompts. I'm like, just run it through here, and it's just gonna help spit out something that's a little bit better. And so that's taking a lot of the guesswork out. Like for example, I had an assistant a few years ago, and he was so formal in his writing. Right, it was like, I don't know, let's make something up. Right, you got to close the front door in the apartment building, and he would be like, to whom it concerns, ensure that the front door is closed. Thank you, the management. Like that classic, like, I don't know, you've seen them in like the bathrooms of fast food joints where you're just like, what the heck? Like, this is okay.
Who wrote this?
And I've told him, like, dude, that's not me. Like, we're nice to them, and like, say, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Friendly reminder. And I'm like, and we sign it, right? We're not the management. It's like, whoever wrote it, just write it. It's okay. And so and now, like, ChatGPT just ensures that happens pretty regularly, and we hit the right tone with things. So that's a big area that we're using it in. I haven't touched it for the underwriting piece yet, and I know that's coming, and I can feel it, where you're just going to take a listing or take some data, you're going to dump it into some magic system and say, all right, give me all the, the senior metrics for this thing, and do the analysis and make a report. And I know it's coming. It's going to be great. I also have amazing spreadsheets because, again, I was a data scientist. And so, like, for it to hit my standards, it's going to take a while. I think for it to hit normal people's standards, like, yeah, it's probably already there, to be honest. And so we're getting there. We also so on the flipping side of the business, the way that we primarily generate leads is through ads. So like, we got a video going on Facebook or a picture, and it's like, hey, you want to sell your home for cash? That classic thing. And people click on the ads, they go to our website. It's got a nice little video of me talking about how amazing we are and how we can help them save time and, hassle, all that stuff. There's a form, they fill it out. That form then goes to make.com, which is kind of a modern day if this then that type of thing, and it kicks off a whole series of things. It it automatically adds them to our database, and we actually have like 2 because we want to have a backup. And so we got that one. It sends notifications to us, on Slack and email, because again, we don't want to miss it because speed's important. But then we have a CRM that it also, like, we've figured out how to format it, send the API over to that. And that CRM has an AI feature to it. And so, and that does the follow-up. And so it'll do the initial, they sign it, and it's, hey, thanks for reaching out. Awesome. Would love to set up a time to talk with you. Here's our calendar, right? It sends that one. It's pretty straightforward. But a lot of it is kind of deterministic, where it's got like regular rules. Hey, follow up on these intervals. But then depending on what they reply, it'll tweak the message just a little bit. And which is super helpful, because it actually seems like it's coming from a person. Actually, I have a hilarious story about this. When we try to do all the communication through that, so that it's all kind of, they're all getting one single phone number. We had this lady, she had a home that she wanted to sell. It was a manufactured home, which we were like, we're like half interested in this. The issue is just the margins. The homes don't sell for that much. Construction costs are kind of fixed. Like, a roof is the cost of a roof, no matter where you're doing it in terms of the number of squares. And a manufactured home just doesn't add in a new roof that's not going to add enough value to make it worth it, that kind of thing. So like you got to get it for a really good deal, like $1 type of thing for it often to make sense, which I have bought. But this lady, she was like, we had an initial conversation. She was like, I don't know. And we're like, okay, sounds good. And we, we do it. She was like, I'll just make an offer. Let's see where you're at. And we're like, okay. And the advice that I gave him was like, look, here's what we're going to do. You want to buy it for 55,000. I get it. Offer her 50. She's going to come back with 60. And then you go, okay, how about 55? And we'll pick it up for that. And even then it was like, that was our max offer that we wanted to do. And we were still like, we'll do it. We'll make money, but we don't love it. And so anyway, so we're doing it through the CRM system. He texts her and says, hey, talk to my partner. We're willing to buy this place for $50,000. She comes back and says, could you do 60? Before we have a chance to reply, the AI jumped in and went, sorry, like 50 is the hard number. Can you do that? And we're both like, what? What just happened here? Are you negotiating for us? It was very surprising. I was also like, all right, cool. Like, I mean, at least it didn't say, sounds good.
Yeah. That's what I thought you were going to say for a second.
Oh, man. Yeah, that would have been an interesting conversation. But yeah, so we're using it in that regards. And it's just, it takes the monotony of following up out of the equation, and it varies things just enough where I mean, if you're paying attention, you can be like, oh yeah, okay, this is a formulaic thing. Like if you know that's what it is, you can tell. But for the most part, for normal people, like, all right, yeah, like messengers are a little bit different each time, and and whatever. So that's another way that we're using it. And we've experimented with other things like, hey, using AI to create podcast clips. It's not great at that yet. And so we've primarily abandoned that. But like we keep experimenting in those types of ways. The voice assistant things are super interesting. And I've thought about like the question that I've started asking, I've asked multiple people now, is like, what does an AI first property management company look like? Because nobody in this area is doing that, right? They all got offices, they've got people. I'm already kind of weird where I'm a remote office, and that's just because that's how I want to work. I have an awesome place at home. So, but like, what does that look like? And for me, it's like something where it's like, for example, I've got a storage facility, and the way that it currently works is if someone calls or goes to my website, it instantly goes to voicemail and says, hang up, go to this website. And it's just a simple URL. And then it automatically sends them a text message for that. They click on that, takes them to my storage facility website that, talks about how amazing we are and has all the SEO stuff. And then it has a reserve a unit button, right? And they do it. It takes them to a type form where they can literally select the available units, tell me their information, boom, they're off to the races. And right now that then kicks it off to a real person who then calls and verifies and does all this stuff. And we're in the process of saying, okay, like this isn't necessarily AI, but we can automate this entire process of them watching onboarding videos, signing the rental agreement, all that stuff. And I'm like, we can, like, all this is automatable. Everything's connected to an API. But my thought was like, man, could I use a tool like Vappy? Yeah,
I'm not sure how it's pronounced either.
Like super powerful tool that's kind of like you can connect it to 11 labs, and you just be upfront with them. Hey, this is James AI. Thanks for calling to make a reservation. What are you looking for? Here's what we have available, and just collect all the information so they're talking to a person. And instead of filling out the form, I think. And all those calls will be recorded so I can re-listen if I wanted to. But like, how do I do that? Or on the customer service side, I've got a bunch of knowledge and upload that to somewhere and then create like a self-serve type of bot where someone can call in, and instead of going to voice message, like they get me and I'm going, hey, what do you need help with? Ideally, again, my property management software is connected. It has an API. I want to connect that to the system so it can look them up, figure out what their rent is, if they're behind, have those negotiations, talk with them about it and empower the machine. Like it's going to get there. I'm not there yet, but like those are the type of like next steps that I'm thinking through. I use it a lot for like reading contracts. Like I am not a lawyer. I have zero desire to be a lawyer. Yeah. So like, if we get a sales contract and I instantly upload that, I'm like, all right, tell me about this. Like, what are the highlights? What are things that like don't look maybe standard? What are some things that I need to ask about? And I get into a meeting and I seem like a genius. I'm like, so I saw in section, 16A here. It was mentioned in this. Like, tell me a little bit more. And now, obviously, I had to go in and like, once it pointed me in the right direction, yeah, that is kind of weird. Okay, I should ask about that. Like, for example, a few years ago, even before I had my property management company, I was looking to buy a place way out of town. It's like a 5-hour drive. And I was going to hire a property manager, and they sent me a management agreement. And that's exactly what I did. I uploaded it, and they had some things in there, which was like, hey, if we manage this for you, if you ever decide to sell, you have to use us as your broker to sell. I was like, oh, that's an interesting little call out there. And it was like, I had like 5 or 6 things that I asked about. Every single one of them, like, oh yeah, we can remove that. No big deal. It's like, oh, interesting. Okay. This is how this relationship's going to go. And so it was just super helpful for helping to find those kind of things. When I'm talking to, oftentimes when I'm talking to sellers now, they want to sell quickly for a reason, right? There's some sort of something going on. And so there's things where like we can get the initial title report, we can upload that and be like, what's going on? And like, and it'll help explain it. Like we had one where this guy, he had a very, very strange financial instrument for it's called the home equity investment. It was weird. It was like this. I hadn't seen it before, and so I was able to upload it, and then it explained it to me. This is what's happening. This is how this works. It was a very strange. It was like a multifaceted deal, and had I not used AI, like I don't think I would have understood what it was. Like because it was all written in legalese stuff. I'm like, heck, I had a hunch the homeowner who I was talking to didn't understand what he had signed up for. And I'm like, dude, this is genuinely confusing. And so it's been really helpful for things like that. I haven't used it for like writing any like super firm, like you hear people where it's like, hey, write it as if you're my lawyer. Like I haven't done that. Thought about it, but I haven't had to do that yet. But I'm not opposed to it. So I think it's like AI right now on the generation side is really great at the summarizing and for ideation. And that's kind of how I'm using it, right? Hey, summarize this, call out things that I need to do, give me ideas for what to ask about. So I find that super helpful. I will use it also just for like doing some high level market research. Like for example, I get done with a podcast and I create a transcript from it. And then one of the things, part of my process is I upload the transcript and say, hey, like what's something here that I just ask questions like, like what are some spinoff episodes that I could do from this idea? And what's something that maybe I've touched on, but could dive a little bit deeper on? What was something that might be confusing to a passive investor that they might want to know more about? And I've just got those kind of things. And that often I'm like, 90% of it, I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. But like, and all I'm looking for is like the 1 or 2 ideas where I go, oh, okay, yeah, this is a good episode idea. Let's roll with this. And so I'm using it for things like that.
That's cool. Yeah, that reminds me of my note taker. I tried a whole bunch of different note taking ones for Zoom, and the one I've settled on is Fathom because one of the things it does on its own is poses questions like that when you click on the transcript or the summary or whatever, and then it has like ask Fathom or something, and it suggests some different questions based on what the transcript was. So you can be like, oh yeah, that is a good question. Click, and then it'll pull up the pertinent section and kind of give it a little bit more of a summary.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm using Otter AI.
Yeah, I tried that one.
Yeah, which is good. I guess I use it for my business stuff, but I actually use it for other meetings where they're like, hey, James, can you take notes? I'm like, yeah, sure. Start. And because I don't know, like when you're in a meeting, whoever's taking the note taker, like, man, I'm sorry, that's a lame job because you cannot multitask. And so you're just not in the conversation. So I wish
I was on the board of a food. It was called North Coast Food Web. It was in Astoria, and I was on the board for a year and a half, and it's all about the food chain in the North Coast, and like connecting small time growers to the customers and all that stuff. But I served as the note secretary for almost like half a year for the last section of my kind of term there. Yeah, that was horrible to try to write notes and also participate.
Yeah.
If that kind of an AI note taker had existed then, I definitely would have tried to use that. I know you probably can take audio recordings, because these were in-person meetings, but there's probably a way to do that.
Yeah. So like so like for example, I was in a meeting last night and yeah, I just had it on my phone and I just like took my phone, turned it on, set it down in the middle of the table. And we just talked and the microphones are sensitive enough now where like they can, for the most part, they catch it and they catch
Getting enough
enough.
of it.
And then I'm doing what you're talking about, right? I'll then take that and say, hey, summarize this for me. And auditors, they're okay. I mean, and that's part of like, that's the weird part about all this. Like, and I, by the way, I'm a super fan of like 80% solutions. That was actually my secret sauce. Was I was good at saying, let's only automate 80% of this and then I'll do the other 20%. Cause usually there's like a customization that has to happen either on the front end or the back end. But that middle part, it's all the same chunk. And so I look at this the same way where it's like, all right, I as the human, I'm going to come up with with what we're going to talk about and whatever. And then this thing's going to record it. And then I'm going to have to do some cleanup on the back end. Like, and I'm okay with that. Like, as opposed to me getting it all clean, in the moment, I'll do it all after the fact. And I've just learned I can't wait 2 weeks to do it. Cause then I'm like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
But like I find if I do it within a day or two, I'm like, oh yeah, it's all fresh in my mind. I'm like, and it's good enough on the highlights where I can go, okay, I just need to clean this up and and it's usually it's more verbose than what I want, which I'm like, that's my preference. Like I don't want to be like, oh, you talked about stuff. Great.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's been again, that's non-business stuff, but that's been super helpful. And I know that people like it because I was in another meeting where I'm I'm on a board as well, and I'm part of the finance committee for it. And so when I run the finance committee, that's the tool that I use for tracking everything because they were like, James, you run it and take notes. I'm like, yeah, that's not happening. and so we got into the big board meeting, and whoever it was who normally takes notes couldn't be there. And like, hey, James, do your AI thing.
Do your magic thing.
And I'm like, yeah, 100%. And so, so you can tell like, yeah, that's a valuable thing. People get it. And the output's good enough where like, yeah, no, this is super. Even on all of those, I'm like, by the way, if you want the exact transcript, here's the link. And so you can find it and do what you're talking about. Like there's even a little chat bot. You can ask all sorts of questions. Yeah, I think you're going to see more and more. I know the current trend is like, what is it? I think it was like 2 CEOs were doing investor updates and they like had their avatars read a statement, which I'm like, I guess we need to rethink that process. If we all think it's good enough, like just send the scripts out ahead of time. What are we doing? But yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see like where these things go. Like I think there was some engineer, which like this is totally way an engineer would think. But like, why in the world would I create a prompt to write an email, send you that email, and then you get the email and ask AI to summarize it? And it's like none of us are actually reading that middle section.
The actual thing.
And the engineer thought it was like, will we ever get to a point where I'm just sending you the prompt and you're like, hey, want to send you an email saying sorry, but in a nice way. You know what I mean? Which I'm like, that's such a way an engineer would think. I love it. But it'll be fascinating to see how communication changes as a result of it, where we all start to be like, dude, whatever, like, let's get rid of this middleman thing. Like, here's my prompt. And I'll be shocked if we ever get there. But I do also wonder, just like for some of the things like that, like what's going to happen in terms of critical thinking? Because there's something magical about having to write, or like you just have to have a clarity of thought in order to say it. And I wonder what happens if we're not doing that as much or not practicing as much. And that was one of the concerns about Google, right? Was like, man, what do you do if you pose a question and you don't take the 30 seconds to try to think through the answer? You just go, good question. Boom. Let me look it up. Like, does that have long-term impacts? And my gut tells me yes, but I also like to quantify things. So I don't know, but it's going to be interesting.
There's a comedian, what's his name? I forgot his name, but he's talking about how back before Google, you wake up and you wonder about something and you don't get to just whip out your phone and get the answer right away. You have to wonder all day long and maybe ask some people if they know the answer to it. But now it's just like, boom, there's the answer.
Yeah, I think there's something there. Like there was this is kind of related. So one of the things I talked about was with all the streaming stuff, and Netflix is definitely one of them, where it's like now we'll do something that's relevant. They're coming out with a new Stranger Things, right? When that first dropped, they were like, here's the whole season. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And what was fascinating was that people struggled to remember elements of specific episodes. Instead, what they remembered was the big arc of it. Whereas like other things where they were more like, I guess Game of Thrones would be an example. I didn't watch it, but I heard it was popular.
Yeah.
where they were all weekly. And so people would, like you were talking about, they would wonder and think about each individual episode. And there's something magical about that slowdown where it's worth it. I've thought about this about like reading books too, where I've read some books where I'm like, honestly, this could have been a tweet. It didn't need to be a whole book. But the value was there was this simple concept that I then spent 200 pages thinking about. And it took me multiple days to read. And I think that was valuable to just have me sit on it, because then the idea stuck a little bit longer, as opposed to me reading a white paper or a blog post. Yeah, I would have read it and moved on. And so it makes me wonder, like, using AI is awesome. I think it's great. But how do I also make sure that I slow down for those things that I've decided are critically important? Because there's other stuff where I'm like, man, like, I'd be okay if I never drove again. That doesn't seem like a critical skill that I need to have. Like if robot taxis came and I lost the skill to drive, I'm like, awesome, cool. But there's other things, and it comes back to like the discernment, right? Like, what's it really important that I get right? I think, like, the underwriting, right? Yeah, there probably will come a time where I can pull it off, but man, if things go wrong, I won't know why. I won't be able to learn from that and fix it going forward. Or at least it'll be a lot harder for me to do it if I'm not practicing. And I think like they talk about this with cars, where the issue, like with the self-driving car stuff, is like, if you're full self-driving, awesome, problem solved. And if you're fully doing it yourself, you're like, it's less awesome, but it's good. But it's like, it's that middle ground is actually the most dangerous, because you're no longer practicing the mundane stuff. And so when the time that you get called in to do the driving is it's rapid. You don't get the back out of the driveway and get warm up into it. And B, it's a complicated situation. The AI couldn't figure it out. So now you're being called to instantly jump into the hardest driving situation possible. They're like, man, you got to be an expert driver. And guess what you haven't been doing? Practicing driving.
Yeah.
and so like there's this weird middle ground where it's actually extremely dangerous. And I think that's like with some of the AI stuff, right? If you can fully offload something, go, cool, it's got it, not a problem. But it's going to be that middle ground. And I think you're going to see that in some, like, it could be interesting with like difficult conversations, right? If we're not practicing writing just like the easy regular stuff, when we got to write a difficult email, you're like, like I'm going to lean on AI to do it because I don't know, and maybe it doesn't nail it. It's going to be interesting to watch and find that balance. And I think people who can learn to find that balance, like, hey, this is important for me to still do, versus no, it's not. I think those are the people who are going to succeed. And that's like, or not. And it's kind of a moving target too, which is hard. But
well, it's all like to get good output, you need to. It's garbage in, garbage out. So you to a degree, and I think the art is going to be in just the prompt engineering. Like giving more information for it to work with, rather than just be like, write this email.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. And I think people who invest in that time to figure out what that is, and because the example that I keep coming up with is like, it's the calculator, right? Like, first you use slide rules, calculator came along, and I don't know how to use a slide. And then then it was like, and now there's Excel, right?
Yeah.
And I've had situations where it's like, it's funny, like if I even get in like just like a simple math situation now, I'm like, I know how to do the arithmetic. It's just been a while since I had to do it. And but I can now use Excel to do some really cool advanced stuff. But the trick is, when it gives me an output, I kind of got to ballpark it, know if this is the right answer. I kind of be like, all right, this is working the way it's supposed to, because this is what I would have expected the answer to be. And like, you're going to have things like that where, and I think that's what AI is going to be, right? It's going to enable this whole new set of things that you could never do, but we are going to sacrifice some of those base skills. But I think that's okay. But again, to some degree.
And then become even more reliant on these artificial intelligence.
Yeah, honestly, if you took Excel away from me and you were like, all right, James, I want you to underwrite this real estate deal, I'd be like, okay, sure. Like, maybe. Yeah, I would struggle to do it. I mean, I would be able to do a really basic analysis, and honestly, my price would become an under all the time, because I would always I'd be super conservative, but like that would be my thing. I'm like, I don't know. Like that's an interesting thought for me, where I'm like, yeah, if you took that tool away, like I'd be hosed. Like, I don't actually think I wouldn't be good at doing it anymore. Yeah, that's an interesting. And same thing with like all my property management stuff, like all the bookkeeping is one of those, like, it's prime for AI to help you out. It's just like, just pre-categorize for me. Like, that's all I want.
Yeah.
And And it's great at that. And if I had to do that by hand, I'm like, oh, I'm out. Like, I'm going to go find a new job. Yeah. Oh, man.
Boring stuff. I kind of like that data entry kind of thing, but it's sort of meditative.
Yeah, to a degree.
It's to each his own. Yeah.
I used to enjoy it. I did everything in a spreadsheet up to 16 units, and I had all the categorizations, and it looked super cool. And then I had them float, and then I had all that flow into like tenant statements that I could create and send. It was great. And then it got tiring after a while. You're like, all right. This was like, I feel like there's a tool built to do this already. And it turns out there is.
Yeah.
QuickBooks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. AI is going to be interesting on just its impact. I think it's going to have a slower impact on the real estate industry than anywhere else. And that's primarily because real estate's just slow to take stuff on for whatever reason. And I think it has to do with the whole real estate really is like, it's an atoms world, right? It's like real tangible things. And so I think there's just, whenever you're making that crossover, I think it's just slow adoption. Another example. So like I said, when I was going around interviewing people, asking them what do I want me to do? Well, based on that, I started a software startup, and the entire idea behind it was, let's take a home inspection, let's analyze it, identify what the defects are from it, like the home inspection you just had. Then let's say, here are the projects that you need to do to fix it. And we're going to give you cost estimates for doing all of them. And then here are some people who could help you do it. That was the entire idea. And we ended up selling the company to Thumbtack. They're kind of like an Angie's List home advisor competitor. And because they're like, hey, this is a great lead magnet. And we used AI to read the inspection, to pull stuff out. And then it was like a half AI, half deterministic. Like, okay, once you got the defect, here's what the project is. And then we worked with a very large provider for cost estimates. Like, they're one of the largest providers for insurance companies. So we felt good about their estimates. And we put together this whole report, and it was really interesting. Like, and our whole thing was like, we can turn this around crazy fast, right? Alternative is like, you got your home inspection. Cool. Let me go call a contractor who will then look at it. They'll pick off the 3 or 4 big things, give you estimates, and kind of go from there. And maybe depending on like if you've got an HVAC thing versus a roof thing versus a plumbing versus electrical, like you're talking to multiple people, was we're like, we can do it all in one shot. And at least get you a ballpark. Like, we'll get you where you need to be. Like, it's that 80% type of solution. And we can do it like in less than a day. And the big pushback on a lot of people was like, yeah, but how do I know these are real? Like, well, I mean, based on data, I guess. I don't know. And we're like, here's some people who you can call. I mean, it's literally like the numbers that we're getting them from is the same software that contractors use to bid jobs. Like, they're all the same numbers. And now the big difference is like, a contractor is going to go and they're going to look at it, and they're going to be more precise on their scope of work. So they'll give you an actual, like, a better answer. Like, oh, we get that. But yeah, there's a lot of distrust around doing it. Now, what would happen is we'd get a realtor on board, and like, they'd use it a couple times. I'm like, this is amazing. Yeah, there you go. And so they'd love it. But our big hurdle was getting people even just to try it was a thing. I got a friend, he's an agent. Like, I was like, hey, you should run your description for the property on the MLS, like, run that through ChatGPT. Tell it like, hey, I want you to, pick a good salesperson, right? Give it a Zig Ziglar vibe. I don't know, Alex Ramosi, whatever. And I'm like, and just see what it spits out. And at first, it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I write it, and then he did it once. I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing this from now on. And but it was like, there's that hesitation. So, which for me, I look at it and go, awesome opportunity. Like, if I can be on the cutting edge of this and adopt to some of the things, improve my operations, not just reduce costs, but actually provide a better product and service. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, it's going to be awesome. And so that's for me. I see that opportunity.
Well, yeah, that's a good segue into one last question here and let you go. But so, looking ahead 12 months, what would make you say that was a breakthrough year for both your business and your quality of life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's so have we established? I got a couple balls in the air, a couple of plates that I'm spinning. I think it's simple. I think it's for the management company to be self-sustaining in the sense that I've got a team in place who are using the tools and systems that I've put in place, and it's not just managing the existing portfolio, but even like helping it grow, right? And my job is to watch over that system, right? To focus on the business itself, which probably means, I don't know, that means I'll have to give up the tenant screening at some point. But knowing me, I'm going to I already have a rubric that I run through, and it's okay, the training piece. I think that's going to be another big part of it. It's using technology for just the training side of things. Right now, I got an okay process. It's I'll do whatever I'm doing, record it 1 to 3 times, and then tell them, all right, hey, watch these videos, and then create a checklist, and I'll make sure you got a checklist right, and and we're good. That works. That works decent. And but I think for me, and for it to be self-sustaining, is about adding units, and because then I can afford the people and the training, and because the margins are actually pretty good for a management company. That was part of the other. That was actually another reason why I jumped in. Was I had someone else who was running a management company who was struggling, and she was like, "Hey, can you just take a look at my stuff? Kind of, I just need another pair of eyes, someone who kind of gets it, who understands business. Help me out, consult me." And I saw the numbers and went, "Holy cow! Are you kidding me? These are your margins?" Okay. And she wasn't even running it well. And so anyways, if I can add the units, I can add the people, and I can get them to run the systems and processes. And so to add the units is all about, I think for me, if I had to back it all the way up and say, what's that first domino that does it all? It's if I get good at generating leads and closing them, but if I get good at generating leads, I believe that I can close them, and I believe that I can put the people and assistants in place. And so to have enough where it's around that 200 unit range where you go, okay, I can hire an operator to overlook all of this and do some sort of revenue share, and it all works. And now we're off to the races to where I can jump in and just help goose the capacity and help solve those kind of problems. That would probably be a breakaway year for me. Got some deals that I'm looking at that I would love to buy. But naturally, that's always it's always a good year anytime I buy something, which when I first got started was only every other year. And man, I was on those off years, I was man, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But now it's I'm buying 4 or 5 a year, so it's all good. But yeah, I think that's to take it all the way back, right? I feel like I'm sitting in that that self-employed quadrant, and I'm just starting to get into that B business self-contained quadrant. And so I think for me, a breakaway year would be yes, I've moved the property management out of that self-employed into the business side of things. That would be it.
Well, I wish you luck in that. I feel like you're just the person to accomplish it from the time we've spoken. So
yeah, appreciate it.
But and thanks for spending your morning here talking to me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That wraps up another episode of Thank You for Your Reply. To our listeners, you can find show notes and links below this video, or if you're on audio, it'll be in the show description. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe so you'll be able to catch the new episodes when they drop. If you'd like to talk to me about how you can optimize your business with tried and true AI technology, please head on over to thereply.ai to get in touch. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, and remember, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.